Hello, everyone, and welcome to Schwab Coaching. My name is Cameron May. I'm a senior manager here at Schwab, and this is Getting Started with Technical Analysis. And today is all about attempting to spot those elusive chart patterns known as price reversals. And we're going to be talking about two ways that some traders might use an indicator known as on-balance volume to spot chart trend reversals. So it could be a very interesting discussion. I would be curious to know how many of you in our live audience today have actually used on-balance volume, also known as OBV? Chat in, let me know. Are you familiar with it or not? But in any case, we'll set particulars for the discussion in just a moment. Let me first of all say hello to my live YouTube audience. Great to see Will and Dragon Rider, Life in the Fast Lane, Austin, Ranjit, Jeff, Jeremy, Robert, SJS Photography, everybody else. Thanks for joining us week after week. We really do appreciate your attendance, your contributions here. If you're here for the very first time, I want to welcome you as well. And if you're watching on the YouTube archive after the fact, enjoy the presentation, but be aware that you're invited to join us in the live discussion. This one kicks off 2 o'clock Eastern time on Tuesdays. We'd love to have you here. And I also want to let you know that my very good friend Barb Armstrong is going to be hanging out in the chats with us during the live stream. Barb's going to be answering any questions that I can't get to. Thanks for being there and having my back there, Barb. And Barb and I would like to issue an invitation to you, whether you're watching live or you're watching on the archive. Make sure that you're following us on X. It's the best place to connect with us in between these live streams. You can find Barb on X at Barb Armstrong CS. You can find me there at Cameron May CS. All right, but let's get into it. First thing that we always need to do, of course, is to consider the risks associated with trading. This is important information, so bear it in mind. The information here is for general informational purposes only and should not be considered an individualized recommendation or a personalized investment advice. Investing involves risks, including a loss of principal. Schwab does not recommend the use of technical analysis as a sole means of investment and research, and any investment decision you make in your self-directed account is solely your responsibility. Okay, so we're talking about on-balance volume today. Let's provide some steps for how we're going to accomplish that. Number one is I'm looking over here at the chat window, and I see regarding my question about how familiar are we with this? Nope, not me. No. Hey, Chris B says yes, I use it. Robert says yes. Ranjit says not me. Okay, so this is going to be new, I would suspect, for most of those watching live and most of those watching on the archive. So the first thing we're going to do is add on-balance volume to a chart, talk about how it's built. Then we're going to move on to how a trader might use on-balance volume in their efforts to spot stock price trend reversals. That's a big task. Let's see if on-balance volume at least appears to do it, right? And then we're going to look at a range of example stock symbols just to illustrate how one might use OBV looking for these trend reversals. So should be a great discussion. Let's go right to the thinkorswim desktop trading software. And here we have Walmart. Now I've already cheated. I already applied on-balance volume. Let me show our audience how to do that. If you don't know how to add or remove a technical study, that can be done right up here under Edit Studies. So I'm going to click on Edit Studies. There we can see our on-balance volume that's already added as a lower study below our price chart. I can remove that by clicking the little X here and clicking Apply, and it is gone. So if I wanted to add that study, I'd reverse that process, go up to the little flask icon. I can go down in alphabetical order down to the O's for on-balance volume, or, see there it is right there at the top, or we could just start typing in the name as a keyword search. So let's do that. ONB, on-balance volume. I'm not going to be doing on-balance volume modified, which adds a couple of moving averages to the indicator. But let's click Add Selected and click Apply. And there's our indicator again. Okay? So it should appear, if you're adding this to your chart on thinkorswim, the default on the white background should be this purple oscillating line. And oscillating means it goes up and down over time. Now, so let's talk about what this is, and then we'll talk about how it might be used. But the first thing we'll notice is, yes, there are some numbers over here in the right column, along what we call the y-axis, showing us how the highs and lows that on-balance volume can reach. One thing I want to point out is that this is going to vary widely from one stock to the next. And actually the numbers, for at least the on-balance volume traders that I've dealt with, don't really matter. It's actually the expression of the line itself, not the absolute value of the oscillator. But just so you know, this oscillator can be positive, it can be negative, it might be displayed in millions or thousands, but I'll explain how, okay? But there is not a range-bound nature to this. It can go up as high as it wants, it can go down as low as it wants, okay? But let's talk about how this is constructed, okay? Let's go over here to our scratch pad. And you know me, I like to show the equations that generate our technical indicators, and sometimes they're fairly involved and they'll involve multiple steps. Not so much the on-balance volume. This is one of those indicators that's fairly straightforward. It comes down to one basic equation. You take the current on-balance volume, and not correct, spelled inappropriately, or not inappropriately, but incorrectly, the current OBV, and then you add or subtract something known as the period volume, okay? That's the equation for calculating OBV, but let's talk about what OBV is really doing. At its core, what on-balance volume does is it takes a day's trading, well, that is assuming we're using a day. And for this example, and for all examples that I'm going to illustrate in this webcast, we're going to be sticking with a daily chart, just a one-year daily chart. Okay, so what on-balance volume does on a daily chart is it looks at price and volume and generates a value from that. Specifically, it looks at how much volume we have over a given trading day, and then it assigns a positive or a negative value to that volume, the whole volume, based on what price does. So if we have 100,000 shares that trade in a given day, and price creeps up a penny or more, then that day gets assigned a positive on-balance volume, a value of 100,000. If we have 100,000 shares in a given day and price creeps downward at close by a penny or more, then that day's on-balance volume value is assigned a negative value of 100,000. So it really is just what did volume do and what did price do? How much volume was there and what did volume do? So let's sort of extrapolate that out into a typical on-balance volume line, okay? So really we start with day one. Let's say on day one, we close at 50 bucks. And then on day two, I don't know why I'm numbering these. Don't really need to. Let's get rid of the number. Okay, day one, we close at 50. Day two, we close at, let's say we close at 52 on 100,000 shares of trading volume, okay? Close at $52 on day two, 100,000 shares traded. Well, what do we know about the price activity from day one to day two? Price went up. So the OBV value would be what? It would be plus 100,000. Now let's just move on out to day three. Let's say on day three we close at $51 on, how about we stick with 75,000 shares here, a little bit lower volume. What would the new, let's see if we can figure this out before I put the number on the screen. What would the new on-balance volume value be? Here would be the calculation. Well, we had 100,000, so that was the current OBV. We now have price falling on 75,000 new shares of volume. So we're going to subtract 75,000 from the current OBV, and that gives us a brand new OBV of 25,000. So if we were to plot that on a line, and actually this is still going to be positive, right? Yeah, it's still positive, but which way would that OBV line be going? Yeah, we went from 100,000 in value downward to 25,000. You got it, speak truth, exactly right. Okay, so I think we're getting the rhythm of this. Let's go on to day four. Let's do one more. Let's say on day four, we close, doesn't really matter where, let's say we close at $53. Okay, so price is up, and let's say we have 150,000 shares that traded that day. Do a quick calculation for me. what is the new on-balance volume value? Well, we were at 25,000, but we had 150,000 on an up day. So we're going to add 150,000, and that gives us a new on-balance volume value of 175, and that's going to be a positive. Just to drive home that point that is positive, I'm going to label it that way. But this is the way that on-balance value moves, okay? So sometimes net it's moving up, other times net it's moving down, but each day it changes unless there's absolutely no change in price. In that case, we can see occasionally on-balance volume going sideways. Well, that's the construction, not terribly complicated, right? Now, what I would forgive someone for thinking is that, well, it's just always going to go in the direction of price, right? I mean, if you look at our Walmart example here, price has been climbing higher, on-balance volume has been climbing higher, and isn't that just going to be the nature of things? Nope. There are definitely going to be times when on-balance volume is going one direction, price is going the other direction. So let me give you a very basic example. Let's say that we have 5 trading days where price is moving up and down, but in 4 of those 5, price went up. Let's say Ranjit says, so price is not even part of the calculation. Ranjit, price only determines whether the volume is going to be assigned a positive or a negative value. So it's not the fact that we went up a penny or $1 or $5 or $20. Nope. If price went up by any amount, that day's on-balance volume value, that day's period value is going to be positive. And the size of that value is purely based on the volume, okay? So size based on volume, positive or negative based on price. There is no multiplication of price times volume or anything like that. I hope that's clear. But let's say that we have our hypothetical stock and it's been trading for 5 days. 4 of those 5 days, we go up. Let's say day 1, stock goes up $1. Day 2, it goes up another $1. Day 3, it goes down $1. Day 4, it goes up $1. Day 5, it goes up $1. Well, we went up 4 days, $1 each, that's $4 gain. Down 1 day, that's a $1 loss. So net over that series of days, we're up $3. So in that case, we'd say, well, price is definitely going higher. Let me give you an example of when on-balance volume might be going the opposite direction. Let's say that on day 1, we had 100,000 shares. That would give us 100,000 positive period value. Day 2, we have 100,000 shares. That was another up day. Day 3, the down day, let's say we had 1,000,000 shares that traded on that day. So lots of trading, the net of which price went down. Day 4, price went up, but only on 100,000 shares. Again, day 5, same deal, up $1 on 100,000 shares. So what would OBV say about this scenario? Positive 100, positive 200. Uh-oh, we got 1,000,000 to account for now. The on-balance volume would drop from 200,000 down to minus 800,000 and then start climbing again. Minus 700, minus 600. So here we have price after 5 days, which has gone up, decidedly up. But on-balance volume value has dropped down to a net negative of 600,000, right? So does price, or does on-balance volume always confirm price? No. And as a matter of fact, it's that in its nature that traders might look for on their chart that might signal when we're getting these sorts of trend reversals. But I did want to point out, it's not always just a straight up confirmation of price. So let's look at some examples of this. And the first one I wanted to look at is, let's look at Microsoft. And we're going to talk about 2 potential ways to recognize or to spot possible price trend changes. Just because these show up on the chart, it's not a guarantee that, oh, we have this signal from on-balance volume, so therefore price is required to go in a new direction. Nope. But this is what some traders will look for from their on-balance volume to signal trend reversals, okay? Number 1 is that when we note that on-balance volume is climbing, what might we know about, or what might we assume is happening with price? Well, if on-balance volume is going up, What that generally means is at least the bulk of the volume for that period is more about buying than selling. That's the bottom line on balanced volume. So from October here of last year into February of this year, the trader might see, well, the bulk of trading, the bulk of that volume has been driving the OBV values higher. And yes, actually, price has been going right up along with it. And when we see on balance volume making these higher highs and higher lows, what some traders will do is draw a line. And if you're wondering where these blue lines came from and where these blue ovals came from, I just drew them on the chart, okay? But a trader might just draw a line across the lows of on balance volume and say, well, that's the current norm. That's the normal behavior of on balance volume. Right now, the norm is bullish. What if there's a change in that normal behavior in the form of a trend break? So here you'll notice we're going up, pulling back to a low. Running up again, pulling back to a low on unbalanced volume, still making a series of higher lows, forming that trend, and then right here in about the second week of February, that unbalanced volume starts to slip below that trend line. So for some traders, the interpretation there is, wait a second, there may be a disproportionately larger amount of selling happening here than what we've seen in the past, right at a point where we would expect that buying to kick in. So if the selling is kicking in at a critical tipping point, that may be an indication that price is set to start to struggle. So it might signal that the price trend, which in this case was trending upward, might be about to move into a sideways pattern or sometimes even into a downward pattern. Okay? Doesn't always play out. And as a matter of fact, look at this signal. So that really happened around February 15th. Let me put an oval on the price chart at that time. February 15th is actually this red candle right here. What was the trend of price at this moment? At the time of our trend break on our OBV, looks like we might be able to make a good argument that there was still an intact upward trend in price. So somebody just studying the price chart might conclude, hey, this still looks bullish. Let's take new bullish trades. Whereas our volume indicator is saying, hold on, pump the brakes. Might be time to hold off on new bullish trades. Did that do a great job of calling the absolute top? Nope. It's not actually designed to do that. It actually missed a peak right there. And it was, in this case, a little bit premature. But overall, you can see for the coming months, the price really didn't accomplish much. And actually, net was down after 3 months. So did a trend shift emerge here? In this case, it looks like it did. All right, so now we have our on-balance volume starting to move downward. Well, in this case, the trader, in observing that in the rearview mirror, so this, we have to let it play out for a while, but as this starts to make lower highs and lower lows, they may draw a new trend line and then wait for a break of that. This may be an indication that the selling is stronger, waiting for a heavier volume buying to kick in, as measured by this one indicator. Realize it's limited. It's not guaranteed that it's going to deliver performance results on every trade, right? But in this case, you can see on-balance volume starting to break that trend line right here about that first week of May. And that came about right here. So once again, is it a perfect signal? Did it call the absolute bottom? Of course it's not perfect. There are no perfect signals. However, it did appear to do a fairly serviceable job of signaling that, hey, this sideways pattern from the last trend break may be over, and maybe we're about to start a new bullish cycle. And it looks like that played out through about July 12th, just missing my birthday. Ranjit says, from December 23rd to January 24th, the stock was sideways. Can you please look at that from the OBV perspective? So December, you're talking about, oh, here? Yeah. Actually, Ranjit, we can, and I'll come back to that. Okay, that's a good question, and there is something that's technically interesting there. But let me just make a mental note and actually a visual note right here. That's the period you're talking about, right? Okay, I'll come back to that. Anyway, yeah, this break of that downward sloping trend line on our OBV did a fairly good job of recognizing when price was about to go up. Not perfect, but in this case, could we see how that may start to add some conceptual value if a trader's just trying to refine their entries on, let's say, new stock positions? I think we can see the potential there. Again, no individual OBV signal is a guarantee of performance, but we start moving up, price starts moving up, OBV starts moving up, and we might draw our new trend line. Here we are on one of the biggest companies in the world, and it's behaving just like our OBV trader might expect it would. Here our trend line breaks about that second week of July here. Our price trend is still intact. In this case, looks like our signal might have been around here, these couple of tiny little days right there, okay? Might be a signal. Look out, there's a new trend underway. So from here to here, it might have saved the trader from some up and down frustration. Here to here, maybe putting them on some bullish potential. And then it looks like we've started moving down again, down to about these days. This might have helped a bullish trader sidestep a short-term disappointment. Might have helped a bearish trader with some profit potential. So in this case, trades seem to be working out. I do think it's interesting that most recently we've had a quite recent break above our OBV trend line to the downside. So there may be some OBV traders out there looking at reversals right now, taking new bullish positions. Okay, that is how we might look for trend reversals. Now I've got to go back to Ranjit's question, because the question here was, okay, could we look at the price behavior back during this time frame when price is going sideways and compare that to what's happening with on-balance volume? And yes, we can. This takes us right to our second potential signal for trend reversals. Here, we have a sideways trend that is actually, and the word we use in OBV language, and also this is a term that's sometimes applied to other oscillators like CCI and RSI and MACD and stochastic. But we see a divergence in what price is doing and what OBV is doing during that time. So you'll notice from December 1st through, what is that, really January 9th, we kind of went sideways. The price highs are essentially identical, not perfectly identical, but pretty much identical. But at the same time, though, if we go back to December 1st here, on our OBV, what are our OBV highs doing? Let's go back to the same high. It's going to be around, yeah, right there, that same period. Price is going sideways, OBV is going higher. What that might be telling the trader who uses volume in their equation is that there might be some subtle behaviors in volume that are not obvious on the price chart. Yes, the stock is going up and down, it's net going sideways, but the real volume seems to be happening when traders are buying, with less volume when traders are selling. So even though we're net resulting in a quiet period for price, what might be the OBV trader thinking is most likely to happen once we move out of this sideways consolidation. It may be a sign when we see a divergence between what price is doing and what OBV is doing. It may be a sign that price is about to go in the direction that OBV is already headed. Is it a guarantee? Of course it's not. Nope. And as a matter of fact, there are even some traders here, Ranjit, who might say, well, this is it's a divergence, but it's a kind of a weak divergence. Because a quote unquote true divergence is when price is going one direction and on balance volume or our oscillator is going the precise opposite. Okay, here's an example of that. Let's go have a look at, let's say, Alphabet. Okay, see if this looks similar to what Ranjit was talking about, but a little bit different. Instead of looking at a sideways price behavior, we're looking at price net going down. Here's Google. It went up and hit a peak and pulled back. It went up and hit a new peak, didn't even get back up to where it was and started going down again. What would be our trend of our price at that point? Well, our trader might say, well, price net is going down, right? If one uses that definition of a price trend as higher highs and higher lows, or lower highs and lower lows. Here we have two cyclical highs that were lower. Well, at the same time though, and I could have stretched this line back just a little bit further. Let me just redraw that. Let's activate that drawing. Pull it back to the starting point for our price. So we're just using the same time frames. But you can see here our on-balance volume was actually going net upward. Meaning, once again, despite the fact that price has been cycling downward, sort of a generalized interpretation of volume behavior is that the volume seems to be heavier on the comparatively fewer buying days than on the selling days. So maybe there's more enthusiasm for buying than is otherwise obvious on the price chart. So this is known as a divergence, and it may be a signal that a trend, a price trend, is about to reverse. And do you see that right here? On-balance volume already going up, and in this case, price decided to go with it. It's not always going to work out exactly that way. So that's an example of a bullish, what we call divergence. Sometimes this happens in the opposite direction. Sometimes you have a stock that looks like it's making great progress, but volume is kind of drying up on those buying days. So that would be an example of when we have, like that hypothetical where I had 5 up days and 1 down day, but that down day had all the volume. Let's look at Amazon. Here you can see Amazon just cruising along, hitting a peak here in April and pulling back, hitting a higher peak there in May and pulling back, running up to even a higher peak there in July before pulling back. And yet our observant OBV trader might look at this and say, well, we hit a peak on OBV here in May, same time price peaked, but it did not get to participate in that full rally that we saw in price. Matter of fact, it had a lower high as we moved to July. Not as much buying volume in July compared to the selling volume as we were maybe enjoying back in May. So for our on-balance volume trader, they might say, hold on, pump the brakes. There may be something afoot here. Might be a trend shift underway. And in this case, that's just what played out. All right? So 2 potential ways that a trader might identify trend reversals. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Neither one is a guarantee that a trend reversal is absolutely imminent. But if we look at Amazon most recently, let me just draw something in here. Here we have highs, we have lows on balance volume. What's happened very recently on Amazon? Looks like just in the last few days, we might be creeping above. Is that about right there? I think that's pretty fair. Yeah, our OBV traders might have said, okay, we had a divergence. We're waiting for something else to happen with our OBV to signal that it might be time to start looking at bullish entries again. And that may have been as recent as just a week ago. Okay, let me see. Art says, is this the same as RSI and MACD divergence? The concept, Art, is, yeah, pretty similar. Is it the same indicator? No, they're different indicators. So their construction is different. The relative rates at which these sorts of divergences might appear on securities are going to be different. But the concept is the same. Price going one direction, the indicator going in opposite direction. Grant saying, is there a cup and handle mid-August? Let me see, Grant. Mid-August, you say right through here somewhere? Maybe this right here? Kind of a deep cup. Well, my cup wouldn't balance very well if it had that big deep point on it. A more traditional cup and handle might be something like this one right here. I like that you're bringing up these patterns and seeing if they're playing out on a chart. But yeah, cup and handle is when we get a long kind of drawn out sell-off in price and a rally that takes us basically to where the sell-off started. And then a smaller dip. So if you can imagine that sort of a cup, the bowl of the cup, and here's a little handle of the cup, and when we break out of that, maybe we get a move that's roughly equivalent. Let me draw this in here. So if this is our cup right through here, and there's our handle, let's go to the depth of the cup. If I could right-click on this, let's duplicate that drawing, and we might look for a move roughly equivalent to the depth of that cup. That's pretty interesting. Great. All right. Well, guys, I think this one may be a short one. It's one of those indicators. It's not terribly complicated to construct. And actually, the interpretation, in theory, isn't terribly complicated either, but it can require some discretion because we're relying on trend lines that are manually drawn. So yeah, the application of those are going to be left to the eyes of the trader. So it can require some experience as well, getting some repetition with it. So if this is your first time seeing OBV and you have some interest in, maybe internalizing these concepts, good way to do that is go to your paper money account, look through a series of stocks, look for the trend reversal signals of trend line breaks and divergences, see if they pan out. You can even just do it on a single stock and look back over time and just follow through. See if we can spot the divergences and the trend line breaks. See if they result in a significant trade or a trend change. Hey, SJS Photography, thank you. Smash the like button, they say, for traders. Yeah, if you're watching these archives, if you're watching the archive or you're watching live, doesn't matter. I hope you're in the habit of just clicking that like button, as so many people already have done in this live stream. I'm seeing how many? Looks like we have 23 that have already clicked the like button out of 123 watching live. It's always appreciated. Yes, it feels like a pat on the back or applause to your presenter. It also helps the webcast get a boost in the YouTube algorithm and find a wider audience. So it's always appreciated. But I have a couple of other recommendations, suggestions for you, and that is take advantage of the other educational resources that are available to you outside of these webcast series. One of those is make sure that you're following your favorite presenters on X. You can follow Barb here on X at Barb Armstrong. You can follow me at Cameron May CS. But this is the best place to connect with us in between these live streams. And it doesn't cost anything to follow. And by the way, also make sure that you're subscribed to our Trader Talks channel on YouTube. You can subscribe in 1 second. You just go down, click on the subscribe button right below the display window, or down in the lower right-hand corner, there's a smaller icon you can use to click on subscribe. But literally takes a second, doesn't cost anything, but our channel is the best place to find our previous archives organized into playlists, and you can find the live streams right there as well. Okay. Let's see. CKC, that's a new technical indicator for you. Yeah, enjoy that. I hope you enjoyed the discussion. But time for me to let you go. We're going to do this again next week. Each week we reconvene and we talk about new concepts in technical analysis, and we start at the beginner level, get ourselves acquainted with how they're built, how they might be used, look at some examples. We're going to do that again next week. I'd love to have you there. I have other webcasts that are sprinkled throughout the week, so you can join me live. You can watch the archives. It's all good. But I'm going to look for you in a future webcast. I'll also look for you on X, but whenever I see you again, until that moment arrives, I want to wish you the very best of luck. Happy trading. Bye-bye.